how did this happen for me? Instead of the victim rhetoric, look at all this that happened to me. Woe is me. Fuck those people. Let's begin. Okay, so I would say good morning, but it's actually, my clock is actually wrong. It's like 6, I think 52 right now, PM. I took some BCAAs, so hopefully I get some energies, but I was like, I could take pre-workout, but I said, you know what? I don't think we need it. So in today's video, in today's lecture number 5, we will be discussing Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. Amazing, amazing, amazing book. Now, it's actually been a long time since I've read this book, and I was very glad to have reread it because this book offers a lot in the sense of perspective. And I could say this book is the sole reason why I do not harbor sympathy for other people. Now, I think there's a difference between compassion and sympathy, but when you read a book of an Austrian who survived 4 Nazi concentration camps, and throughout the totality of it, every time any of the other people, any of the other prisoners said, woe is me, said, how terrible is this, said all this, in spite of it all he did was consistently focus on the positive, on the gratitude, on the green grass, even in the worst of the worst, even leaving concentration camps that cannibalism had outbroken since. He came out of it with a sense of joy and fulfillment. And the premise of that entire sentiment, it makes it very hard when you hear people's problems and you hear people bitch and you hear people moan. It's very hard for me, with all I've endured, with whatever trauma that I've persevered through up until this point, to harbor sympathy for a person who the entire premise of the book is perspective. That's the entire premise, is the same person who bitches and moans, yet does nothing to change. The one severity they lack the most is perspective. Because you tell your problems to somebody else, and this is the line that I wanted to start with, is there's someone out there dreaming to live out your worst day. I have to repeat that. There's someone out there right now, and you have all of your problems, you have all of your stresses, you have every reason why you're not wanting to get up in the morning, right? There's someone dreaming to live out your hell. And when we lose sight of that, our cross to bear becomes unbearable, right? And so the whole premise of this book, of the author, Viktor Frankl, who survived 4 Nazi concentration camps, coming out with a sense of joy and fulfillment, the entire premise of the book is condensed down to 3 ideologies. And there's so much gold in this book that we're going to go over. I have 8 pages of notes for us to discuss. But this is the most important thing from the book. Is twofold. Number 1, there's only 3 decisions you can make in this life. It's what you focus on, it's the meaning that you give things, and it's the action that you take. Period. Everyone in the Nazi concentration camps had a choice. They could focus on the lack, they could focus on the despair, they could focus on the woe is me. But the ones who lived, which statistically he shared, it was 1 in 28, right? That's between 3 and 4 people for every 100 were living. So for every 96, 97 people, 1, right? Or 3 to 4 rather. 1 in 28. And he said the total recurring theme, 100% of the time, of the ones who survived, of the ones who endured, they had the will to endure the how, despite how seemingly unbearable that how was, because they had a why greater than themselves. That is the most important takeaway from the entire book. What you focus on, the meaning that you give things, and the action that you take, but more important than all of that, the title, Man's Search for Meaning, the meaning to life, the meaning to your life, fulfillment in your life, is spinning yourself in a cause greater than yourself. serving a person other than yourself in the form of love. That's it. And so if you're in a state of suffering, which this entire book predicates, that suffering is a choice. It's a choice. Pain is one thing. Suffering is a decision. You choose whether you suffer or not. By your focus, by the meaning, by the action or inaction, right? So that idea is so important. And the one homework assignment, I'll say it at the start of the video, start of the lecture. What is your why? Most people don't know what their why is. Most people go through their day drifting. They have no goal, they have no target, they have no motivation, they have no purpose. They have nothing that their eyes and their focus is constantly recalibrated to fixate on. They're constantly obsessed about themselves. My why is quite evident because it's the same thing that I've been saying for over 10 years now. But Ratlife itself was in inception, came to be in 2015. There's even a clip on the Ratlife YouTube channel, which me and my brother, we own, called just Ratlife. And we did like a little skit for Snapchat, and I was like, do you want to get shredded? Are you lacking motivation all the time? And then it's like, and I said, we're all going to make it. Ratlife. I used profanity in it at the time. I was, granted, 19, 20 years old. But this idea that we can all make it, which is on my wristband, we're all going to make it. From a video of an Australian bodybuilder who passed away at 22 years old who said that. I said, we're all going to fucking make it, bro. That's it. And it was in a tribute video. The man, Aziz Shavershian, was passed away in that video. And that's what made it so heavy and moving. He said, we're all going to make it. A 22-year-old kid who died with the exact same backstory as me, who planted that seed of belief in me. If he can do it, so can I. It's possible. I can. We can all make it. What I didn't know going through my journey is how Ratlife would develop and how I would be charged with, by God, giving people the key to their escape. Planting the seed of belief in others. It's possible. You can. We can all make it. We can all escape the rat life. And what is that rat life, dude? The rat life is it surviving 4 Nazi concentration camps? Is it working a dead-end job? Is it living paycheck to paycheck? Is it coming home to a significant other who doesn't respect you, who doesn't love you, with no sexual passion or intimacy, right? Is it being broke? Is it drowning in debt? Is it you forestalling and forfeiting your dreams and going after them, your ambitions, your goals, right? That's the rat life, man. But we live in a perpetual state of fear as if we have something to lose. The book that I love so much about this is it's the biggest juxtaposition. As in, I get to look at my problems in my life, and then I get to read Viktor Frankl's. And then I get to say, wow, my life's not so bad, right? And if you don't have that sense of gratitude and appreciation for what you have now, for how far you've come, for all that you've endured, your mind is fixated on the wrong things. Because a lot of people, me included, I'll be happy when? I'll be happy when? When I make this money, when I'm in this relationship, when I have this status, when I have this physique, I'll be happy when? It's bullshit. Because you can decide, and this is all in the notes, to live in a state of gratitude, joy, grace, appreciation, playfulness, in spite of it all. Despite when suffering and pain and loss and death is omnipresent, as he discusses in this book. So I just wanted to start the lecture off with planting some seeds of ideas. Because throughout this entire lecture, I just want you to start to think for yourself. That's the whole premise of this university, is planting the seed of belief of, it's a good quote by Andrew Tate, my unmatched perspicacity coupled with sheer indefatigability makes me a feared opponent in any realm of human endeavor. Unmatched perspicacity, the ability to perceive. Most people don't open their eyes. They don't observe the world around them. They don't bother to ask the iteration question of why. Why do I believe this? Why am I so upset? Why am I harboring so much negativity and animosity and bitterness and spite? Why am I punishing myself for somebody else's mistake? Why am I focusing on the lack? Why do I feel like I don't deserve to be loved? Etc. Nobody asks the hard questions. Or, what is my why? The basic question. Why do I get up in the morning? What's driving me? What's inspiring me? What's not inspiring me? What am I allowing to feed into my state of depression, of complacency, of doing absolutely nothing except bitching and moaning and feeling sorry for myself, right? The woe is me, the victim mentality. No one in this university is the victim, man. Your life, your fault. 100%. I don't care what happened to you. As soon as you assume full responsibility and ownership for your life, you give yourself power to change it. And in spite of the bad, in spite of the suffering, in spite of what horrendous act, physical, sexual, verbal, whatever abuse, whatever pain you've endured up until this point, you can decide to give yourself an empowering meaning. You can decide to say, I wouldn't have wished this upon anyone, but I'm glad I went through it because I have this strength now, because I have this gratitude now, because now I'm in a position to help somebody else going through the same adversity, hardship, pain, tragedy, right? What if you use your pain and trauma, right, and were galvanized by it and not destroyed by it, right? What if you decided in your search for meaning to give it a beautiful meaning? What if you had the courage to say, how did this happen for me? Instead of the victim rhetoric, look at all this that happened to me. Woe is me. Fuck those people. Let's begin. This is a quote by Viktor Frankl. And I didn't see it in this book, but I think it's in one of the other 30 books that he published. And he said, between stimulus and response, there is a space. And in that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. That entire line, right, is predicated on the meaning that you give things for whatever you're going through in your life, right? Whatever tragedy, whatever pain, whatever loss. It's like when you ever see a kid fall, right? There's a moment when they look to you for your response for them to gauge their response. So if you look at the kid and you're smiling and you're just like, oh, you fell, they won't start crying. If the kid falls and there's that little moment and then you're just like, oh my gosh, they'll start bawling. There's a moment between stimulus and response. There's a space, right? Where you decide the meaning that you give that event, that condition that happened to you, that happened for you. Is it just dust yourself off and get up? Or are we going to live in a state of victim mentality, rhetoric, narrative for fucking years to come? It's choice. And that's what I love about that line. He said, there's a space where you choose your response. Decision. And it's very important for states such as depression. The event that may have induced it perhaps wasn't your fault. But to go on and carry on that for years to come is a consistent decision. Because you're deciding what you focus on. You're deciding your thoughts. You're deciding the meaning that you're giving things. And you're deciding the action that you're taking or not taking. I see this shit all the time, right? And this book, of all he endured and all of he witnessed, the worst of human dignity, right, around him. And for me now, when I see people complain who have every advantage, who have every luxury, who have every grace, for me to harbor a fucking ounce of sympathy for those people would me be doing them a disservice. I had a phone call with my mother yesterday, and it was about my little sister crying over not getting a job, right? Because she's been trying. And I said the issue was her self-confidence and her self-image. And I asked her a question, and I laughed with my mom afterwards because she said, this is not what you say to your little sister who just got rejected from, a job. And I said, Lila, I was like, when was the last time you were happy with the way that you looked? She hung up on me. But I explained it to my mom, who she was insistent on coddling her. She said, you don't ask them, about losing weight right when they get their job declined. And she said, you say, I'm sorry that happened, this and this. I said, fuck no. I didn't use profanity with my mother. I don't do that. But I said, I said, no. I said, stop. You giving her the dopamine, the sympathy dopamine that she's craving by you coddling her is doing her a disservice, the biggest disservice, right? And this is why it's so important to have a father figure in the house. And I told my mom, I said, Mom, you're a great mother. You're a terrible father. Because what a father would do is have the conversation, is look at the solutions, not treat the symptoms, is look at the root cause. And it's like when you go into an interview and you're presenting a person, in my little sister voice, but I was kind, I was this. And I said, if a person is presenting to me, themselves to me, who's this much in a negative, healthy physique, to put it lightly, I said, what does that, and I was explaining this to my mom, I said, what does that reflect? A lack of discipline, right? Lazy, and then someone who doesn't like themselves. Right? And I said that. I said it has not, and my little sister and my mom, they were explaining this. They're like, you're making your little sister so upset because you're making it seem like you have to look good in order to get a job. I said, no. It's what the physique reflects. When somebody comes to me and they're 100 pounds overweight and they want a job from me, and it's like, why would I choose to hire someone who is the physical embodiment of sloth, of laziness, of a lack of discipline, of work ethic? If you think neglect doesn't bleed, and someone who doesn't like or love themselves, and then they don't omit that confidence, that reassurance, that likability, so then why would I want to hire someone who I don't presume to be a joy to work with, right? I'm extrapolating all of these things in real time with my mom, who finally softened, who finally stopped, and the reason that I love to share this within this university is because one day this will be for my sons. Right? Sons watching this. Sons plural. When in the book 1, in the start of the university, I said my son Henry. Now we have Henry and William. Those will be my 2 sons, my noble heirs to carry on my name and legacy. And it's very important that as that masculine role model, that masculine leadership, that you do a person the biggest disservice by coddling them, by giving into their sympathy bullshit, by giving them that fucking dopamine hit that they end up chasing, right? And we live it, dude. I was having this conversation over a WhatsApp audio message to my friend Ricardo. And I said, we live in a world right now, this fucking participation trophy bullshit, this coddle culture, this victim narrative, this everyone, I said, the world is gonna crave structure and leadership and ownership and personal agency and responsibility one day. This bullshit is creating so many weak fucking people. And I shared with him the quote, strong men create good times create weak men create hard times. And I said, this next generation is the fucking most emotionally weak and brittle people I've ever seen, to where they have no emotional fortitude. And my little sister was voicing all of her concerns of how much trouble and trauma and adversity she's been through. I was sharing this to my mom. She hasn't been through shit. 0 financial stress or worry, 0 physical abuse, 0 sexual abuse, 0 anything stolen from her, nothing. The only thing that has happened to her life is in her own head, her own thoughts. They're all fucking made up problems. And then by her focusing on changing her body and getting her health right, I said it would solve all of them. All of your health problems, all your mental problems, all your emotional and spiritual problems, your job problems, your financial problems, fucking everything. If you take care of the one vehicle you have in this life, right? But that's all of that. I'm sharing that with you guys because it's predicated on the underlying fear, and it's so important because it's in this book, which was published in 1946. He shares it. He says, because of the void of responsibility, you're going to see a loss in freedom in the world. He voiced that when he published it in the 1940s. How many people do you know today who assume any fucking responsibility or ownership for their life? Far few between, none. No one has a sense of honor, of integrity, of character, of feeling like I have to abide by this standard, right? I have a responsibility to pursue my passion or my endeavor or my dream or my vision or my goal, because I understand that by me pursuing this, I can reach somebody else. Nobody has that sense of it's not fucking about me. Everyone is so self-absorbed, self-obsessed, woe is me, victim mentality, coddle culture, participation fucking trophy. How many people do you know who are actually heroes in their life? How many people do you know who take responsibility and ownership for their actions and their decisions and the consequences as a result? How many people do you know who are fucking, are saying, I'm gonna fucking die, right? I owe it to my family and the people that I love to be my best, to give my best, because I understand by me filling my cup, by me leveling up to here, I have more to give others. It's not fucking about me. The end of this book on the last page, do you know what he says? Frankl was once asked to express in one sentence the meaning of his own life. He wrote the response on a paper and asked the students to guess what he had written. After some moments of quiet reflection, a student surprised Frankl by saying, the meaning of your life is to help others find the meaning of theirs. That was it, exactly, Frankl said. Those are the very words I had written. To a cause or a person greater and other than you. That is the meaning of life. Of fulfillment, of joy, of ecstasy, is to quit bitching about your own problems, woes, and stresses, level the fuck up, quit feeling sorry for yourself, and do something about it. We all have problems. We all have tragedy. How many of you are surviving 4 Nazi concentration camps right now? Fucking none of you. Next. The problem isn't the problem. The problem is your attitude about the problem. Captain Jack Sparrow. Because in this book, the whole idea is whatever problem, tragedy, adversity, struggle, pain you're going through, right? It's the meaning that you give things. It's the attitude that you have towards it. Something like a problem or stress is so easily made to endure by the Nietzsche quote, that a man with a strong enough why can endure nearly anyhow. So many of you guys, that's why the only homework assignment for this book is what is your why? Because as soon as you lose sight of your why, the reason that you're getting up in the morning, you put so much weight into the adversity and hardship of the day's task ahead. Arnold said it. He said people would always criticize and say, why are you smiling when you're in the gym training 5 hours a day when everyone else around you is looking miserable? And what Arnold said is because he knew his why. He said, because I knew that every weight that I lifted, every set, every rep that I did, I was one step closer from turning my vision, my dream, into reality of being the greatest bodybuilder of all time, right? And that transitioned in his life when he became the greatest bodybuilder of time, when he became the highest paid actor of all time, when he became the governor of California. Only he would have been the president if there wasn't the requirement that you had to be a United States born citizen. It's just like, if you have a strong enough why, then the fucking day-to-day struggle and adversity and grind, dude, it's not only tolerable, you'll smile during it. Because you know, dude, I'm one step closer from turning my vision, my dream, my goal into reality. The problem is, and this isn't Start With Why by Simon Sinek that we'll go over in semester 2, we lose sight of the horizon, of the finish line, of the target of the goal. And then this is the worst thing, and this is actually the 10X rule, which we'll also go over in semester 2. The worst thing you can fucking do is you lower the target. That's the worst thing that you can do. How fucking selfish of you to lower your potential because you're giving so much weight to the failure of today, of the letdown, of the disappointment, of the rejection. What cowardice to say, I'm gonna allow this to stand. I'm gonna be defeated by this. You're a fucking man in the arena, right? And rather than overcome that, rather than persevere, rather than endure it, what most people do is they lower the target and then they justify and rationalize why it's okay that you quit. Fuck those people. Those are victims. Those are people who feel sorry for themselves. And then it's not enough that they rationalize it, they have to sell you on their fucking story. And you know the best thing that you can do to them? The best thing that you can do to evoke that you love them is tell them to go fuck themselves. Next. That's all from the Jack Sparrow quote. Someone is dreaming to live out your worst day, we went over them. Taking this gift of a life for granted, we touched upon. And this is from the book. It is possible to practice the art of living even in a concentration camp, although suffering is omnipresent. Story of a camp with no chimney. So there was a story where he's leaving Auschwitz and then he's going to another concentration camp. And then the prisoners started joking and rejoicing and laughing, cracking jokes, because the new camp didn't have a chimney. It didn't have a crematorium. It didn't have a gas chamber for them to be murdered. And so they were stoked. And so it's the gratitude in what you focus on. They could focus on the misery and the woe and there's a line that I'm going to discuss in here, and I'll actually save it. But you can focus on all the lack in your life. You can focus on all the things that you're unhappy about. But dude, by law of attraction, what are you attracting into your life? It's everything that you're focusing on. If all you're doing is focusing on the negative, on the things you don't want, on the lack, and that's all you're talking about, that's all you're fixating on, what do you think by law you're going to magnetize into your life, right? But if you can find gratitude and appreciation in going to a second concentration camp that doesn't have a chimney, if they can do that, how can you not harbor gratitude and appreciation for the abundance that you have in your life, right? That's why it is so hard for me to read stories like this, of the golden books like this, that's the only thing you're going to see in this university, and harbor a fucking ounce of sympathy for people who have never known real hardship, real struggle, real adversity, who have never endured a fucking war before, who have never understood real pain, loss, death, tragedy. All their fucking problems are in their head. Things like depression live in a state of complete abundance and comfort, as in you're not even focused on survival or any actual tragedy or problem, that you have the time to contemplate the woe-ness of your existential existence. Do you understand? You talk about a state like that in any place in the world that has real problems, real struggle, real wars, real adversity, they'll say, get the fuck out of here, dude. What do you want? You want therapy? So, actually that's important because he talks about logotherapy in this. So that was a little tongue-in-cheek comment, because the logotherapy, it's interesting because I was analyzing it, and it's a fascinating idea. And I think this is what I do when I help people overcome their goals. And it's the idea of therapy through essentially observation. As in, what he does is he has somebody say that their problem, their struggle, their hardship, their, whatever it is that they're going through, right? Their limiting belief they're trying to overcome, whatever their breakthrough that they're trying to reach, or loss that they're trying to get over, pain that they're, state of suffering that they're enduring right now. And what he does is he widens and broadens the lens in which the person views life. So what he does is he offers juxtapositions. For example, he shared a story of this guy, just miserable because his wife had died. And then the key to the solution through logotherapy was, he was like, how would your wife have felt if you died and then she had to live in the memory of your loss, right, in mourning? And he was like, oh my gosh, she would have been destroyed, she would have been crushed, she would have been all these things by that. And he said, so what her passing, right, you surviving her, right, is actually the sacrifice. That you're sparing her from that fate, kind of a deal, if the roles were reversed. So just giving a different perspective based on observation allows the person to shift his attitude towards the problem. And it's like, oh, I'm glad that I didn't have her to endure that, right? So it's that sort of sacrifice. It's just an example. It's a base example, but having a dark sense of humor is something that's very omnipresent in the theme of this book. And I put SEAL Team 6 leader because it's something that I've learned from listening to interviews of people who serve in the military, especially the SEAL Team 6 guy who took down Osama bin Laden. He was like, you have to have a really dark sense of humor when you're surrounded by that loss and death on a daily basis. And I've dated cops before, and I know that they have a very dark sense of humor for all the shit that they have to deal with on their daily. So it was interesting that that was prevalent even in the concentration camps, that to cope, as their coping mechanism, they had a very dark sense of humor. Next. So this book is why I don't have sympathy for victims. And then I put my story, family of abuse, why I'm so positive. So I thought this would be interesting to share, just because I don't consider anything that I've been through to be hard or to be tragic or to be terrible. And I mean, I was raised by a father who molested one of my sisters, and then, not the one that I talked about in this video, and then I would come home to my brother being tied up by his hands and feet to a doorknob, and my dad was like, I could step on him and snap him in two like a toothpick. That was the kind of shit that I grew up with. We were all beat as kids. My older brothers got it way worse. They got physically beat. We got for me, go to the bed, there's like an electrical cord, a stick, and a belt, choose, and then getting hit in places that you could cover up going to school. Those kind of things. And then like coming home to my mom, like with like a potato peeler, like to her neck and shit like that. And I don't have any sort of like, oh my gosh, this is so terrible. All it did, because I'm choosing to give all of my upbringing a beautiful meaning. I was like, all my father did was show me and teach me how I'm never going to treat my wife, how I'm never going to treat my kids, the man I'm not going to be, And it's like, it's interesting because I see it in real time with my siblings, how all of them have endured and coped with that sort of upbringing. And people, just from an observational standpoint, they deal with trauma and tragedy differently. As in, some people choose to give it a beautiful meaning, to say this happened for me, to be empowered by it, all of the recurring themes of this book. Some people choose to say this happened to me, to be destroyed by it. But I always ask myself, and this is the reason why I'm so positive, it's like, what is the alternative? What is the alternative? Like, you can be negative, you can focus on the victim, you can be a victim, right? You can say this is how tragic, but the same person who chooses to be a victim neglects to remember the person next to them who's endured far worse, right? It's, and it's very easy to harbor gratitude when that's right in front of you. If you have a sprained ankle and then you go and see a guy who has no legs, right? All of a sudden you stop bitching about your seemingly daunting tragic state of freaking helplessness. But this is the issue, is we don't have that in the forefront of our minds at all times. People lack, and this is the whole thing with the logotherapy, is perspective. People lack perspective. It takes you going to the front lines of Ukraine, Russia for you to be like, oh wow, my life is probably fine. It takes perspective, you understanding, oh, I've survived 100% of my worst days, whatever I'm going through right now, it's probably going to be fine, right? It takes perspective to say, oh my gosh, I don't have what I want, but look at all the things that I do have. The focus on the abundance and not on the lack, right? It's all perspective. It's all attitude. But my default software, dude, and why I'm so positive, the most positive person I know, is what is the alternative? I know that me feeling sorry for myself isn't going to remedy my situation. It's not going to empower me in any way. But I can choose to say, this happened for me, to give it an empowering meaning, and then I, as a result, can become better and stronger for it. Do you understand? Versus the ones who say, this happened to me, is you're not giving yourself any ammunition for the fight, right? You're choosing, and this is why I love accountability. You're choosing by the decision that you make, by your choice of attitude, by your choice of meaning, to give this a disempowering meaning, to be destroyed by it rather than to be galvanized by it, rather than to become someone who perseveres. It's all a choice. And what I love about insisting on that idea, prevalent in this book, is it throws back the burden of ownership and responsibility onto you, the student of life and of this university. Nice. And then he goes over a story of when he saw new members, right, new convicts pass our work site, and we envied those prisoners. They surely had regular opportunities to take baths, we thought sadly. They surely had toothbrushes, mattresses, a separate one for each of them. And then, and this is actually the very important thing, I don't want to say it yet because it talks about a different thing. I'll save it. It's so important because it hits home when he talks about the worst influence. In Mail Monthly, we had lost that a long ago. There's a consistent theme, and this is what I wrote in the notes, I just want to share it. There's a consistent theme of the author focusing on all the gratitude, all to be grateful for, all to be appreciative of, whilst others were saying, woe is me. How miserable are we? He consistently disagrees. And even facing death, he had a choice of just to die by vegetation in his concentration camp or to be moved because he was a doctor, right? And he said, if I'm going to die, maybe my death would be of some use to other people, right? And he said it was simple math, not sacrifice. I just fucking love that so much. The story of fleeing. I decided to take fate into my own hands for once. As soon as I told him with finality that I had made up my mind to stay, the unhappy feeling left me. I gained an inward peace that I had never experienced before. And I put decision, resolve, having a feeling of control, certainty. It's very important that a part of the state of helplessness from a lot of the members of the concentration camps, it came from unlimited uncertainty. And then there was a passage that I was going to go over later, but I'll share it with now. And he said, Oh no, I have to save it. So we'll talk about it later. But it's very interesting how once you give yourself control from ownership of decision making, which he said he was planning on fleeing, and then he constantly, there's a state of despair when you feel like your life and your fate is not in your hands, right? But as soon as you take affirmative action, you say, no, I'm making this decision and I'm gonna live with the fucking consequences no matter what. He said the feeling of despair, the unhappy feeling left me. And he said, I gained an inward peace that I had never experienced before. And it's very cool because it ties in with a quote from Jim Rohn that when a man is resolved, it's as if time and the fates conspire, as if to say, we best step aside, for we are powerless against this kind of resolve. A lot of people, the issue is indecision. The issue is unlimited uncertainty. The issue is they don't have resolve, right? They'll say, I'll try it, it's probably not gonna work. They don't say, I'm gonna do whatever the fuck it takes to achieve my goal. They don't have that level of certainty because they don't believe in themselves. They don't believe in the after. So they're like, why even embark on it? But if you have resolve, if you're like, I'm gonna do it or die trying, there is no wall you can't break down. There is no lock that can't be unlocked, penetrated. There is no time, fate, circumstance that can stop a man who is resolved. And the resolve is just from a decision. There's a great video that I spoke about in a prior lecture where Oprah is interviewing Robert Downey Jr. And he said, the hardest thing isn't the actual event, isn't the actual recovery process of him who is addicted to black tar heroin. He said the going through the rehab, not the hard part, easy. And she said, easy? And he said, yeah. You know what was hard? Making a decision. The resolve is the hard part. Most people are not resolved on themselves. They don't know what their why is. They don't know why they get up in the morning. They don't have any sort of urgency or fire of that. Dude, I have one life to live. A recurring theme in this book, he takes it from Meditations by Marcus Aurelius, which is going to be in semester 2, and it said, I want you to pretend like you're dead, right? That you've lived your life and you're dead now. Now take what's rest of it and live it properly. That's a recurring theme in this book. And most people don't do that. Most people are alive, but not living. Most people think that they have a rewind. They have infinite runs at this. They don't understand that. And this is why my biggest, and this is one of the books that we're going to go over in this semester, is the 5 love languages. One of my number 1 love languages is quality time, is presence. I crave that because I understand how finite this life is. So for a person to give what is finite, their most valuable resource and asset, their time, to me, it's the greatest gift. And I cherish it so much. And a person, you can feel if you're on a date, if you're talking with a friend, if you give a person your 100% attention and focus, and you're not listening by waiting for your turn to speak, but you're actually listening to them, oh my God, it's ecstasy to them. It's orgasmic. They watch it and they're just like, wow, this person's hanging on to my every word. There's so much passion in presence. And so I just love that idea. Next, your life is in your hands. Time and fate are powerless against a man's resolve. Everything can be taken away from a man, but one thing, the freedom to choose. To choose one's attitude, focus, and action that you're gonna take, right? It's so important. I'm gonna say it again. The only thing that can never be taken away from you is your choice. It's what you choose, what you decide to focus on, the meaning that you give things, the action that you take. Those are the only decisions you can make, period. They were worthy of their sufferings. The way they bore their suffering was a genuine inner achievement. The cross you bear that makes life meaningful and purposeful, worth living. But what makes a cross unbearable to bear is when you lose sight of your why, why you're doing this. What is your cause that you're waking up in the morning to pursue, to spin yourself in the worthy, noble pursuit of that endeavor? Or what person other than yourself are you serving? Is it your wife? Is it your kids? Is it your community? Is it your church? Right? Most people don't know what their why is. Most people don't know what their purpose is. Most people don't have one. And they wonder why they feeling a sense of non-urgency. They don't have a fire. They don't have a sense of joy and fulfillment, of God, how many people do you know, dude, who just, they have no passion, they have no charisma, they have no excitement. They're just drifting. They're just a dim light, right? They're not on, but they're not off, right? They're a dim light. What kind of life is that? Is that a life worth living, right? When you just go on a 10% fucking battery in perpetuity. And again, ask yourself the questions, why am I in that state of fog? And this is a whole nother bigger conversation of what is the food that I'm putting into my body? What is the constant distractions that they at large want me to constantly be fucking distracted by? Do you understand? It's the scrolling, it's the news, it's the gossip, it's the celebrities, it's all the bullshit, it's all a distraction. Because you know what the most powerful fucking thing in the world is? It's gonna sound hippie, is love. Love and serving a cause greater and other than you. But it's very hard to do that when you're in this mental fog, this constant state of depression, this constant bullshit from not exercising, from garbage diet food consumption, from poisoning yourself not just in the food that you eat, which most people are and are currently doing, but in the content that you're consuming, in the books you're not reading, in the gossip that you're fucking drinking from a fire hydrant, not from a tap, right? In terms of gossip, news, celebrity bullshit, excuses, negativity, coddling, participation trophies, right? If you cut off all of that, and if you focus on goals, ambitions, passions, targets, this is like my why, right? This is the person I'm trying to serve. God damn, dude, is that not a life worth living? Fuck. Next. Everywhere a man is confronted with fate and the chance to achieve something through his own suffering. The chance to achieve something through your own suffering, right? Not to be destroyed by it, but in spite of it. And he says it in the idea of tragic optimism. He's saying it's not that you need to endure suffering in order to persevere. He said, but you can in spite of it. Former prisoners, when writing or relating their experiences, agree that this is the line that I kept wanting to go back to. Former prisoners, when writing or relating their experiences, agree that the most depressing influence of all was that a prisoner could not know how long his term of imprisonment would be. Unlimited uncertainty. And I left Ricardo a WhatsApp audio message the second I read that from rereading this book. And I said, the most depressing influence in the concentration camps, the most depressing, was that a prisoner could not know how long his term of imprisonment would be. It wasn't when they were being transported and to give themselves relief from standing would crouch down on the urine-soaked slabs of that train. That wasn't the most depressing. It wasn't the cannibalism that outbroke in the concentration camps. That wasn't the most depressing. It wasn't the abuse. It wasn't the loss of human fucking dignity, right? Where you were a number and nothing else. That wasn't the most depressing. It was that you didn't know when your fucking rat life was gonna end. And you had unlimited uncertainty. And I said, wow. Because how prevalent is that idea in your rat life today? What gives people a feeling of despair, right? Of overwhelm is you thinking that the position, condition, whatever that you're in right now is going to be in perpetuity, where you can't see a fucking light at the end of the tunnel. And so you're like, this is going to go on for perhaps forever. This is the rest of my fucking life, right? I had that same feeling when I was living in my car, focusing on all the fucking wrong things, focusing on my current job, my current income, and then whatever loans and debts that I have. And then this is where the despair and overwhelm came in for a second. I was just like, if something doesn't change, I'm a fucking slave forever. Forever. And that is the rat life. Dude, the system is set up for you to be a fucking slave to debt in perpetuity. Right? When I say I'm going to give people the key to their escape, it's in education. It's in Ratlife University. It's giving you the education you were never given in school. It's the idea that if you were taught financial literacy, if you were taught about taxes, if you were taught about how credit cards work, if you were taught about a fucking Roth IRA, if you were taught any of this shit, you wouldn't be drowning in debt, paying off the fucking interest that all this bullshit is accruing right now. right? The student loan debt you have, the mortgage debt that you have, that you were sold on. That's the American fucking dream. When income, $30,000 median household income in the 70s, cost of a house less than $100,000. Now, mean salary income, $50,000. It went up by 20. Cost of a house, $500,000 or more. No one fucking thinks, because no one was taught this. They don't want you to be taught financial literacy, because what would that result in? You being free from the fucking rat life. You would be free. You wouldn't be a slave. You wouldn't be a cog in the machine. You go to school, they condition you to be an employee for life. You're sold on the idea that you pursuing a passion, entrepreneurship, starting your own business, risky. Getting rich in 5 years, risky. Slaving away for 40 fucking years. And then retiring and then be able to enjoy your life. Not risky, celebrated. You getting student loan debt, right, that you'll never pay off. Car financing debt with insurance on top of that, why not, right? Same with the house. You get the mortgage, right? You don't just get the mortgage, you get the property tax on it. If you don't pay 20% of the fucking equity, then you pay PMI, right? Then you pay your HOA, you pay all of this shit, and then you add on all your credit card debt that has 19 to 21% interest rate, and then you add on a family on top of that you have to provide for. You have to work for fucking necessity until you die. Do you understand? They don't give a fuck about you. You're a number to them on a screen. It's the same fucking thing. And people in the state of overwhelm, the most depressing influence is when you think your slavery, which is all the rat life is today. When slavery was abolished, all they did was fucking introduce fiat currency. They were like, oh, we don't want to get rid of our slaves, so we'll just give them enough money to where we were giving them free housing, we were giving them free food and free medicine. Now we're going to charge them for all of those things, but we're going to give them pieces of paper that we can press a button and print infinitely a number of. Slavery never went away. Do you understand? You're working and slaving away your entire life for a piece of paper that they can print, the Federal Reserve, an infinite amount of, right? They can press a fucking button and eradicate all student loan debt. University education can be free like this on YouTube will always be. Do you understand? You're a fucking slave unless you wake up. And the feeling of overwhelm and why this message resonates with you fucking intrinsically is you know your life is not for you to live in a perpetual state of fucking slavery, dude. What a life to live. Drowning in fucking debt, living paycheck to paycheck, barely able to make ends meet, wondering why the system is set up for you to be in a constant fog, right? Constant depression, because they're advocating for the fucking victim coddle culture. It takes someone with a voice like this and the balls to say, quit feeling fucking sorry for yourself and do something about it because no one's coming to fucking save you. That if you don't change, if you don't level up, if you don't take your personal development seriously, you will be a slave forever. So it's very important, that single sentiment, that was the most depressing influence in the concentration camps, was unlimited uncertainty of their fucking imprisonment. Now apply that to your own life. Look at the fucking slavery you're in right now, having to work a job for necessity, right? Until you die, because you're caught into all the bullshit of buying shit you don't need to impress people you don't even fucking like with money you don't fucking have. Do you understand? It's set up for you to be slave forever, to chase the fucking clout, to chase the status, to chase all this bullshit. We're gonna go over financial literacy in semester 2 of giving you the key to your fucking escape, but it starts with your mindset. It starts with you looking at the chessboard and be like, the system is set up for me to do as I'm told, to work a job I hate, to be a fucking cog in a wheel, to pay my taxes like a good docile slave until I die. Do you understand? That stands when a person doesn't have a meaning, a cause greater than themselves. And they settle for that life of fucking contentment, of mediocrity, of perpetual slavery, right? What they don't want is someone who is ambitious, someone who takes personal agency, personal ownership and responsibility for their life, because they look at the situation and say, this is bullshit. I'm not gonna forfeit my entire fucking life to be a slave to this system, right? But most people do, they buy into the fear that you have anything to fucking lose by going for it. You have no idea how fucking resourceful you are. Andrew Tate said this, you're a different fucking man when you don't have a choice, when you have to pull it off. And this is in the book The Alchemist, is when you burn your boats, right? When you go all in, how surprising how resourceful you become when you have to find a way. When you work a job, when you work the 9 to 5, when you make enough to cover your overhead expenses and then have a little bit more to escape your fucking shit life with a little bit of pleasure, with a little bit of ecstasy, with a little bit of drugs, alcohol, sexual pleasure, whatever, and then it'll numb you. You use your weekends to escape your shit life versus you using your weekends to create a life that you never have to escape from. Do you understand? That's the biggest difference, is people today, they live in that state of they accept their life of fucking slavery, right? But most people don't even know that they're a slave. And that's the issue. And then most people, the despair comes from you thinking there is no end. And we're going to live in a perpetual state of slavery forever, right? And so for me, nothing gives me a greater sense of urgency than it's like, if I don't do something, this might as well be the rest of my fucking life. I refuse, this quote by Crixus from the show Spartacus, I refuse to die a faceless slave forgotten by history, right? And when you understand that you have the potential to do something, to do a great work, to pursue and bring to life a great cause that only you can bring to fucking life, you understand it's not your ability to, it's your responsibility to. Because if you don't think it's your responsibility, you're neglecting to consider the people that could be positively affected by your success. If I am able to create this with the gifts that are completely unique to me, that no one else could fucking do in the way that I can do them, right? Only I can reach and touch these certain people that no one else could. Me not bringing that to fruition, that cause greater than myself, the idea that anyone can escape the fucking rat life, it's irresponsible. It's selfish of me. But people don't view their life like that. They don't view it with that sense of urgency and that sense of selfishness because they lack the perspective. Unlimited uncertainty, the greatest influence, the most depressing influence across 4 concentration camps. A man who could not see the end of his provisional existence was not able to aim at an ultimate golden life. He ceased living for the future. God, what a great book this is, man. Oh my God, I love it so much. This perhaps might be to date the best book at this university. So I think it's fantastic. But we'll continue. I watched it in a prior lecture. You could hear the paddleball shit going on outside. I'm gonna be honest, it's incredibly annoying when you watch the video and you have to hear that shit. But okay, so to circle back, Joe Dispenza on the emotional state. It's an incredible idea. So when you're going through your rat life, right, and where your actions become subconscious, like have you ever driven in your car and you go on the same road every single day and then you could just zone out and then 5 minutes later you back in? You go on autopilot. And so people who live in these states of depression, their body is resigned to the emotional state of the day to come. And so it's a fascinating idea when, to tie it to the book, a man who could not see the end of his provisional existence was not able to aim at an ultimate goal in life. He ceased living for the future. And so when you're constantly focusing on yourself, on your problems, on your woes, on the woe is me narrative and rhetoric, then you don't have that fire to get up in the morning. You know what I'm saying? When you're just fixating and obsessing about you, right? But if someone else is relying on you to level up, right? If someone is relying on you to fucking show up, right? Then you will. You'll do the work even when you don't feel like doing it. And that is the biggest differentiator between success and not success, is the people who show up when they're motivated and the people who show up. Like, for example, for me making this lecture today, I was pushing it off for the longest time, dude. It's been 2 weeks since I made a video. And it became like where just the fear of getting back in and doing this, and I was just like, and it's a book to come in semester 2, Eat the Frog. Eat the Frog. The title is Eat That Frog. And it's like, if you just do it, and it's from the 10X Rule as well, a book that we're going to discuss in semester 2, that the best way to kill fear is to starve it of time. And so if you put off something but versus just attacking it, you'll realize, dude, there's nothing to worry about at all. So anyways, but it's a fascinating idea. So if you feel yourself when you wake up in the morning and your body is all achy and you feel it's your body resigning to the day, because it can predict exactly how you're going to feel for the day. And I've had that happen so many times where it's just like, I don't even want to get out of bed because I know what the next 16 hours are going to uphold. But that's when you lose sight of your why. And that's why it's so important to do little things like a homework assignment that was in a prior lecture, where it's to change the phone screen of your phone, right? You check your phone over 400 times a day. If you put your number one goal, if you put your why, if you put your reason to get up in the morning at the label of your alarm, there's an airplane now. It's going on wild out there. If you put all of those things every single day when you wake up, it's constant recalibration. It's constantly refocus on what it is, why you're doing what you're doing. And then, so it makes the daunting and overwhelm of the cross that you're bearing less overwhelming, less daunting, less unbearable. Do you understand? So, but the issue lies in two things. You either do not have a why, or you're constantly losing sight of the why. That's it. You're either losing sight of the horizon of why you're getting up in the morning, or you haven't even identified why you're getting up in the morning to begin with. So it's very important because it's all prevalent even in this book, dude. If the people who died, literally they watched people die when they didn't have a why or a cause greater than themselves. They just saw them deteriorate when they lost the will to live. But the ones who did survive, the very, very few, the 100% recurring theme is they had a cause or a person greater than themselves that was giving them the meaning to keep going, right? And it's interesting because it's the same thing with cancer patients. I don't remember who it was by, it was in some video that I watched, and he said the recurring theme of 100% of the patients who made it to remission wanted to beat it. They had to have that. Is that fascinating how powerful your mind is? That if you have the will to persevere, it could heal and cure you. How fascinating is that? That's how powerful your thoughts are and how detrimental. Because if you lose that belief, if you lose that hope, you can literally die. Fascinating stuff. A man with a strong enough why can endure nearly any how. Next. Quote, "A man who becomes conscious of the responsibility he bears toward a human being who affectionately waits for him or to an unfinished work will never be able to throw away his life. He knows the why for his existence and will be able to bear almost any how." Meaning of life. Everyone has a mission specific to themselves that demands fulfillment. Therefore, each man has the unique responsibility to pursue it and to realize it. I love that so much. What is the credo of Ratlife? Anyone can escape. Anyone can escape the rat life. Starts with belief and the courage to pursue. Ratlife, we're all gonna make it. So, because I have the ability, and only me, to bring this to life, to fruition of what this university could be, I have the responsibility to see it through. Because this is a cause, a why greater than me. Do you understand? There's a huge difference. If I was just doing this shit for myself, I have selfish motives with doing this. Do you know what the number one is? Freedom for fucking ever. That is my number one prerogative. Freedom forever. I'll do whatever work it takes to be free. That's all I want. Number two, providing for my woman. Providing for my family. Being the provider that I dream to be. Those are my intrinsic whys. I want to be free forever. But my cause that I'm spinning myself in with Ratlife is I was charged by God because only I was given this vision, this sight, right? This dream. The sight of Ratlife, of what Ratlife could be, right? Only I was given this. It is up to me to see this come to fruition, right? Only me, no one else. Therefore, I have not the ability to, I have the responsibility to see this through. Because I understand who I have the potential to reach. With where AI is going, these lectures one day will be able to be translated in every language that exists in the world. Do you understand? These videos in Italian, French, German, Portuguese, Spanish, a fucking 11-year-old, excuse my language, 10 years from now, right, will be able to watch any of these lectures living in a third world country, right, with no hope, filled with despair, perhaps in a war zone. But if he has a Wi-Fi connection, he'll be able to watch these videos that are planting that seed of belief in him. It's possible. I can. We can all make it, right? Life is about planting trees under whose shade you will never sit. I have the ability to make these lectures of giving you the best books ever written on personal development, right? Giving you literally the keys to your escape from your rat life, something you're going to see me escape in real time through the totality of this university. And I have the ability to make these videos that one day AI will be able to make my mouth speak in any language that exists. These videos will be rendered in every language that exists. And a fucking kid living in Kazakhstan. If it's not one thing, it's another, dude. My freaking, the SD card is full. My point is, to circle back, is that because I know what this university has the potential of the people to reach, thinking 5 years, 10 years down the line, it's not an ability to see it come to fruition. Do you understand? It's a responsibility to see it come to fruition. It's a huge differentiator because I'm ever so conscientious, I'm ever so cognizant of other people I have the gift, the potential to reach. It is so important because that makes me have urgency. That makes me have accountability. That makes me understand I don't have a rewind here. As in, this train has we've opened Pandora's box. This has left the station. This is happening, right? Because I understand that two things. Number one, this is my responsibility now, not ability. I have the responsibility to make these lectures, to give people the education they were never given in school. Education that most people around the world don't even have access to. People in this world that's becoming more and more fake, right? More and more full of bullshit. We're drowning in information and we're starving for wisdom. Ratlife is going to be synonymous with the truth, the hard truths. Good quote I shared with my mom, right? Because of the upset of my little sister. And I said, we live in an emotionally weak generation where people need everything watered down for them because it's too offensive, including the truth. It's so important. This entire university is predicated on truth and principle. That's it. By giving you the best literature ever written on personal development. Because the whole idea is planting the seed of belief. It's possible, you can, we can all make it, right? If you, even as a lie, tell yourself that over and over, eventually that seed takes root and you believe it for yourself. As soon as you believe it, it's true. As you think, so you are. Do you understand? It's the whole premise of the university. So, again, not ability to, responsibility to. And then the second thing is, I know that if I don't do this, fuck the pain of failure or of rejection or this doesn't work out, right? Imagine the pain of regret. Imagine knowing what I could have done, what I could have created, who I could have became, the lives I could have reached, but I was too much of a fucking coward to pursue. Imagine that. Now imagine at that time's end, I have to look one of my sons in the eyes and explain to them why I quit and why it was okay. Do you understand? Apply that same sentiment to your life. It starts with knowing what it is your why is. Because if you don't even have that in the forefront of your mind, if you don't even have that target, if you don't have that anchor, what the fuck are we doing? How do we hit a target that we can't define, right? If you don't have a target, you don't even have direction. You're drifting, right? And usually it's because of fear. Fear of failure, fear of rejection, fear of humiliation, fear of looking less than, right? In this world of clout and bullshit. So, next is suffering is a choice. Suffering ceases to be suffering at the moment it finds meaning, such as the meaning of a sacrifice. Change your attitude about the problem by recalibrating your perspective and focus, the why that makes the suffering all worth it. There's so many ideas in this book. One is paradoxical intention that he shares, because half the book is his time in surviving the concentration camps, and then it goes over all of his psychiatry. And it's fantastic. One of them was paradoxical intention, which I thought was fascinating because I was actually learning this in real time yesterday, where I couldn't go to sleep. And it was an idea of excessive attention and hyper reflection. So when you're trying to go to sleep and you can't go to sleep, and then the thought and anxiety of you not being able to go to sleep, it perpetuates the reality that you can't go to sleep. He said the cure is kind of troll, but what it is doing the opposite. It's you saying, I'm going to stay up for as long as I possibly can, and then the result is you'll be able to go to sleep. And he talks about even orgasming. It's a similar phenomena. He calls it frigidity, or impotence, I think was the word that he used. They were interesting terminologies. But it's when, say, a partner can't climax, they can't orgasm, they can't finish because they're so fixated on that event, on that, peak pleasure experience. And so they're in their own head about it, and then they're focusing on themselves, they're focusing on forcing that versus allowing it to be the natural byproduct. And then he discusses in the book of focusing and serving and surrendering yourself to your partner. And so he said the cure to that, and it's the idea of just letting go and to get out of your own head. And with people, it's so easy to break the pattern, but a lot of people, they're so focused on, again, the event, whether that's orgasming, whether that's sleeping, that he talks about this idea of paradoxical intention, that the cure is to do the opposite, essentially. And then you inadvertently and inevitably achieve the end result. It's a fantastic phenomenon, but because I'm giving you all the gold of all the books, I thought it'd be worth sharing. Read page 128 to 129. I have to read it in full. All right, here we go. So I will read very quickly, but there's two passages that I need to read to you because they're so gold. And I don't really want to do lectures where I just read from the book, but I thought this was so good that I was like, I can't do this lecture and not read this. As for the actual causation of neurosis, apart from constitutional elements, whether somatic or psychic in nature, such feedback mechanisms as anticipatory anxiety seem to be a major pathogenic factor. A given symptom is responded to by a phobia, the phobia triggers the symptom, and the symptom in turn reinforces the phobia. A similar chain of events, however, can be observed in obsessive-compulsive cases in which the patient fights the idea which haunt him. Thereby, however, he increases their power to disturb him, since pressure precipitates counterpressure. Again, the symptom is reinforced. On the other hand, as soon as the patient stops fighting his obsessions and instead tries to ridicule them by dealing with them in an ironical way by applying paradoxical intention, the vicious circle is cut. The symptom diminishes and finally atrophies. In the fortunate case where there's no existential vacuum which invites and elicits the symptom, the patient will not only succeed in ridiculing his neurotic fear, but finally will succeed in completely ignoring it. As we see, anticipatory anxiety has to be counteracted by paradoxical intention, hyperintention, as well as hyperreflection have to be counteracted by dereflection. Dereflection, however, ultimately is not possible except by the patient's orientation toward his specific vocation and mission in life. It's not the neurotic self-concern, whether pity or contempt, which breaks the circle formation. The cue to cure is self-transcendence. Why is that so important, that what I just read? When I read that, I said, holy fuck, I have to share it. That's exactly what happened with COVID. That's exactly what happened with witchcraft, is they spew a line of bullshit. The person who's very easily, emotionally manipulated buys into the severity of the bullshit, right? Of the fear, of the phobia. And then, as a result, they get worse effects from the symptoms that they themselves, by their own mind, created, which then in turn gives more weight to the bullshit that originated. I'm gonna reword that because I know that was kind of confusing. When they brought the bullshit of COVID, right? People who believed in the bullshit of COVID, right, created worse symptoms for themselves, giving weight to the bullshit. You apply that at mass with all of the sheep, then all of a sudden this thing becomes real, and then we get worse and worse effects from it because you, by your mind, can think a thought and lower your immune system. By the power of your thoughts, you can make yourself sick. We just discussed it. By the power of your thoughts, you can heal yourself. You can cure a cancer and achieve remission by the power of your fucking thoughts. They at large know this. And they know that if they inspire fear of some bullshit and you buy into it, you will actualize it in real time by your own thoughts. Witchcraft was the same thing. I cast a spell on you. You believe you've been cursed and hexed now, and so you'll create the symptoms in your own body from your own thoughts, such as lowering your immune system, such as decreasing your white blood cell production, accelerating your heart rate, increasing the cortisol, stress hormone production in your body. You'll create all of the circumstances to become more sick, to give weight to the curse, to the severity that some people even died, solidifying the credibility of the bullshit witch, of the bullshit COVID. It was the same fucking thing. How eerie this was written in 1946. What did he say the cure was? You can only, hold on, that was the next page. Wait. The only way to counteract it is by dereflection. However, ultimately is not possible except by the patient's orientation toward a specific vocation and mission in life. We live in a fucking world of distraction, of fog, of garbage food, of obesity, of all of this shit, making it so you can't even cognitively, with success, observe the bullshit around you because you're in this constant state, this constant numb state, right? You look around and people are drifting. They have no passion, they have no excitement, they have no charisma, they have no reason and hunger and why. And so they can't fight back. That is the only cure, he says, is to break that circle, that formation. The cue to cure is self-transcendence, right? That comes from you having unmatched perspicacity, right? Coupled with sheer indefatigability. As in, most people right now don't even observe the fucking world around them. They don't bother to question the bullshit. They don't challenge it in any way. They just accept it. It is what it is, right? That's just the way it is. They buy into all the bullshit. Do you know why that's scary? There's a quote. This book is by the author who survived 4 Nazi concentration camps. I shared this with Ricardo over a WhatsApp audio message. The scary part is this. There's a famous quote from a survivor of World War II, a Jewish person, who said, "People always asked us why we didn't fight back." And he said, but it didn't happen all at once. It was just a little thing. And so whenever some little thing would be implemented, we would always just say, oh, it's just another little thing, until it wasn't. I'm getting fucking goosebumps telling this. That is called tyranny. They take as much as they can. They take an inch, until the people say, fuck you. And then they back off. And then when you forget about it, because people have such a short-term memory, you don't fucking remember that just 2 years ago, you were forced to wear a fucking mask for 2 years, right? You were forced to have a curfew, right? To survive something that had a lower death rate than the fucking common cold. You were forced to get injected with a vaccination out of fear of losing your job. You had the trinket, the carrot, that if you get this bullshit, if you comply, will give your God-given unalienable rights, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness back to you in the form of freedom of travel, freedom to run your own business. They were able to cherry pick who could support their family and who couldn't. Tyranny just happened fucking 2 years ago, and people don't understand. They take an inch, and then the people riot and they say fuck off, and then they back off. You zoom out, and over the span of years, they've taken miles to where your new normal is fucking slavery. It's tyranny. But you are in this learned state of helplessness. The fucking Nazis did the same thing. They implemented a little thing. Oh, it's just another one of those little things, until it wasn't. Do you understand? The only way to fight the fucking tyranny is to open your eyes and look at the world around you for what it is, by asking the questions, why do they want me to go down this path? This is from the 48 Laws of Power. I allow manipulation from my enemies to see where they want me to go. And then I use my mind to break the trap and punish the perpetrator. Most people, and I know all of these people, they allow the manipulation from their enemies and they allow themselves to be fucking manipulated versus saying, hold on, this is bullshit. And then it's becoming worse and worse in the society where women who are even more emotionally manipulated are the decision makers in the household. And then the beta fucking males, the beta, low testosterone, cuck males in this fucking world are in that state of fear, are complying to this bullshit versus saying, no, this is bullshit, relax, it's gonna be fucking fine, right? We live in that world, dude, where we're emotionally manipulated by fear. And it takes somebody to say, this is bullshit. How about we don't panic? How about we say, let's just see what happens, right? Let's ask some questions. Let's have perspicacity. Let's perceive. Let's observe, right? Versus just fucking docile compliance like a sheep, like a slave. You want to escape the rat life, start looking around you. Start opening your eyes. Start asking yourself, why this, why this, why this? Why do they want me depressed? Why do they want me not to take care of my health? Why do they want me to eat this garbage? Why do they want me to get this vaccination? Why do they want me to fucking comply? Because at a certain point, it's just a fucking game to them. Do you remember when you had to put on a mask to go into a restaurant, and then when you sat down, you could take it off? And then when you went to the bathroom, you had to put it on? It's like, or I remember working in an office where we had to use a glass screen, right? And then it's like, oh, because COVID can't come over. It's just people don't fucking ask any of these things. And people have such a short-term memory, and why this is so scary is because the powers at large, dude, they have nothing but fucking time. And it takes all of this distraction for you to forget you were literally living in fucking tyranny against your constitution, against your God-given rights just over a fucking year ago. And we've all but forgotten about that. Fuck. So I thought I had to share that line in this book because he says the only cure is self-transcendence, is perspicacity, is observation from the world around you, which if you're so hyper obsessed about your own problems, your own woes, you don't have any intrinsic motivation and determination for a cause or a why, a person greater and other than yourself, then this shit is allowed to and permitted to stand. That's where the fucking problem is. Fuck. Next. I'm using more profanity than I wanted to in this lecture, but I want to drive that point home, dude. This is the other part that I wanted to read. So, yes, that's the next thing. Perfect. I'm not skipping ahead. This is a long lecture, but I want to give you all the gold from this book. This is an amazing book. To be sure, a human being is a finite thing, and his freedom is restricted. It is not freedom from conditions, but it is freedom to take a stand toward the conditions. As I once put it, as a professor in two fields, neurology and psychiatry, I am fully aware of the extent to which man is subject to biological, psychological, and sociological conditions. But in addition to being a professor in two fields, I am a survivor of 4 camps, concentration camps that is, and as such, I also bear witness to the unexpected extent to which man is capable of defying and braving even the worst conditions conceivable. Fuck yes. I love that so much, dude. It's despite all of it, despite living and enduring the worst of human dignity, right? You can still persevere by your attitude, by what you focus on, by the meaning that you give things, by you having a cause, a why, greater and other than yourself. But do you understand if you don't have one, you don't have a will, a fire to keep going, right? To overcome, to persevere. The cross you bear right now is so daunting and overwhelming because you don't have that why. So the only homework assignment for this lecture from this book is you writing down, what is your why? Freedom is in danger of degenerating into mere arbitrariness unless it is lived in terms of responsibleness. This book was published in 1946. And where is the world going right now in terms of your freedoms? What I learned during COVID was that your freedoms can be taken away from you. They're a privilege that they can take away from you at any fucking time. As in, when I was doing entrepreneurship, I was doing online coaching, and then that business went out almost overnight. I could only write so many at-home workouts for my clients to do because of every single gym being closed. Interesting how to encourage health. Let's close the place to make people healthy. Fascinating. No one stops to observe and to question that. Let's just comply, like the sheep. Let them take an inch. It's just one of those little things, right? People don't fucking think. And so freedom is in danger of degenerating into more arbitrariness unless it is lived in terms of responsibleness. If you don't have a sense of ownership, personal agency, responsibility for a cause greater than or other than yourself, right? You do not have freedom. Because if you don't have something has that fire lit under you, that's holding you responsible, because you now have to focus and take care of and pursue and bring to life something other than your fucking self, right? Then you will comply with the bullshit that is yet to come. Do you think COVID was the last of it? Do you think what happened in World War II was the last of it? In the course of this university, this shit will happen again. And people within that state of fog, who have no why, who have no cause, who are flying no fucking banner, right? Who are completely self-obsessed, self-absorbed, bitching and moaning about their own fucking predicament. There's gonna come a day where you're gonna experience the exact same thing, and where people are gonna, and they have time, dude. And so people will forget the tyranny the inches that they took before. And you'll see your freedom taken away from you in real time. You're already a slave now if you're working a fucking job. I work a 9 to 5. I understand that I'm working and trading a finite amount of my most valuable asset, time, for a finite amount of something they can print infinite number of. I understand that. And I go in to work with that. My coworkers can see that animosity, that fire, that rage, because I understand the fucking game. Once your mind has been awakened and you go back to the rat life, it's so hard to justify it. When you understand what freedom is and what slavery is, you're just like, this is such bullshit, because money's not real. But people have the delusion from the bill of goods they were sold on, from the school that they went to, from the university that they did not attend, because Ratlife University hadn't been created yet, is that money is real. It's not. It is modern day slavery, because I understand you will trade your time and energy for a finite amount of these pieces of paper. You're a cog in a fucking wheel. You are a number on a screen. You have to escape the fucking rat life, or don't. But that's my prerogative. That's why I'm doing this, is I have that urgency that's like, I have one life, I'm gonna die. Fuck being a slave for the rest of my life. I'm going to pursue this noble endeavor of freedom forever by the simple idea that I can give people the key to their escape, which is education. And I can plant the seed of belief. It's possible, we can all make it, just like that seed was planted for me nearly 11 years ago. It starts with belief and the courage to pursue. That is rat life, dude. The idea anyone can escape. Anyone. And one day when these lectures are translated to every language in the world, that idea will be spoken. That seed will be planted, dude, into a 10, 11, 12-year-old around the world in a language that I never could have reached otherwise. How cool is that of an idea? That one day books like this, or any of the books that are going to be in semester 1, I can share them all with you. Semester 1, we're going to do the compound effect, make your bed, the power of positive thinking, how to win friends and influence people, the alchemist, the 4 agreements, the ultimate gift, seeds of greatness, the 5 love languages, the magic of thinking big, and See You at the Top by Zig Ziglar. Imagine the 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16-year-old who doesn't have access to any of this. One day will be able to be given the key to their escape. Will be able to be watered. I'll be able to plant that seed of belief within them, who never dreamed of the possibility that a life of freedom, that they were privy to it. And they watch these lectures and they watch this university and they're just like, and then they do the craziest thing of all. They fucking believe it for themselves. They water that seed. They tell themselves the lie for years. It's possible, I can escape, I can make it. And then they water it, and then they believe it. And all of a sudden they do. Wow. How can I not go on? How can I not continue to do this? When I understand it's not an ability to, dude, I have the responsibility to. Do you understand? So I had to share that, man. And then the book, it's not your conditions, it is in your decisions. That's the whole premise of the book, dude. It has nothing to do with your decisions. He said that in that quote that I shared. I've survived 4 Nazi concentration camps, and I came out with a sense of joy and fulfillment and meaning. And my meaning, his man's search for meaning, and the meaning in my life is to help others find their meaning. No matter what happens, you have the freedom to choose how to respond to your suffering. It's not merely an option, but as your responsibility to choose the way in which you bear your burden. And I wanted to end with, to achieve meaning, one must transcend subjective pleasures to a cause or a person other than oneself. To serve a cause greater than yourself, or to surrender yourself in love to a person, a man, woman, other than yourself. Wow. That is Mad Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl, book number 5 of the university. I hope you enjoyed. I really hope you read that book. The only homework assignment is I want you to articulate what is your why. It's very important. You talk with people or listen to people like Arnold, who his why was to be the greatest bodybuilder of all time. And he says it in a video. He's like, maybe your why, which my why 10 years ago, 11 years ago, when I first started going to the gym, it was to gain the confidence to talk to girls. You know, I was 145 pounds at my height now of 6'2", and I lacked the courage and confidence just to go up to a woman, right? To have that conversation. And so that was my why. And Arnold says this, he said, if that's your why, great, but it motivates you. But that's fine for a why, and you'll learn this in real time, especially if you're a young man watching this, that's fine if that's your why. That's no problem, because that's what gets the gears rolling. That's what gets you kickstarted. That's what makes you turn the key. But you're going to find, once you see the progression and once you see the beauty of which your body has the potential to achieve in terms of strength, in terms of muscularity, in terms of your mindset, of your perseverance, of your heart discipline, of you learning what giving it your all is, you learn to fall in love with that, and you don't give a shit about girls after that point in terms of what they think, in terms of how you think, or how you feel you should look for them. You can completely disregard that at that point, because you're doing it for your why becomes greater than to talk to a girl. It becomes the beautiful pursuit of your potential, and it's awesome. And then the motivation subsides and discipline will set in once you start to see the results, the fruit of your labor. You know, so once you start to seeing your hard work reflected in the mirror, you don't need motivation anymore. And so the why becomes, at least for me, it became, what can I ultimately achieve, right? How far can I go? What can I become? And there's a good quote. I said this in prior lectures. Life, it's not about what you get. And you're going to learn that with whatever your why is. It's not about the university that I create. It's about, for me, it's about who I become in the pursuit of this endeavor. And then what can I give others now that I've become more? So with that, your only homework assignment, I just want you to articulate, what is your why? What is your why? What is your why? What cause are you getting up in the morning, right? It has to be greater than you. Because if it's not greater than you, you'll hit snooze on the alarm. You won't get up early. You won't stay later. You are not enough. You are not enough. Because if someone else is relying on you, you will show up on the days that you don't want to. That's the differentiator. When there's a cause, when there's something that only you can bring to life with your completely 1000% uniqueness, gifts and talents and visions and everything, dreams that were only gifted to you. You don't have the ability to bring that to fruition, bring that to life. You have the responsibility to. If you're a student in this university, you're taking ownership, personal agency, responsibility for your life. There are no victims. There's no coddling. There's no participation trophies in this. No one's coming to fucking save you. Do you understand? What is your why? make it compelling, make it far greater than just yourself, something that emotionally moves you. You know, part of my why is the cognizance that my mom's gonna pass away in a very short amount of time. I don't have fucking time, dude. Time is running out. It's finite, right? The window that I have to escape the rat life is closing and closing and closing, right? My life, I'm gonna die, closing, 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 finite. I have that urgency, dude, of freedom forever, right? How can I not wake up excited, right? We're all gonna make it. Number 5 of Ratlife University. I hope you enjoyed.